Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling video podcast here on YouTube. At this moment in time, I'm kind of taking away the Daily Motion side of everything, mainly just because of upload time and a few other things, and you're not getting too many views over there and everything in that sense. Also, this week I've been working, for reference, this is being done on pretty much a Friday night for me. And it is something I'm going to be doing a little bit differently this time around, just for this week because I had a long work week, everything in that sense. Instead of doing each video separately like I usually do for Raw and Smackdown and NXT and Impact Wrestling, I'm going to end up doing the three other ones that I said, Raw, Smackdown, and NXT, here in this video. So this one might take a little while. And yeah, it might take a little while, and I might be throwing a few little other news tidbits in there to go along with it. So we're going to do things a little bit differently here for the WWE side, while I'm going to keep Impact Wrestling, which I still haven't watched at this moment yet, to a separate video, which I will release at a different time after I've watched Impact Wrestling. And the reason for... like I said, the reason for this change, for at least for this week, was kind of due to longer work hours and being a little bit more tired than I typically was, and wasn't actually getting to the content the way that I usually do it. So we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. I also was working on, and this show will not show up on there, but I've been working on wanting to do an audio side to everything, which I kind of started with SoundCloud at this point. Now, that, like I said, that's down the road as soon as I get a few other things in there. It's going to add a little bit of editing and everything to everything in that sense. So, like I said, I got a bigger thing of water this time around because this video is probably going to take a little while. So we're going to go ahead and start off on Monday Night Raw from earlier this week. It started off with Roman Reigns coming out, cutting a promo, and this was a funny one. This was a funny one on the aspect of saying that he could not be beaten one-on-one, and he started this off like right off the bat. It's like, I can't be beaten one-on-one or anything in that sense, though he's been beaten one-on-one by Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, and pretty much everybody he's made mention to that one. And then he made mention of Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman, and he can't be beat one-on-one, which, well, he's been beaten one-on-one. And then announces that he wants the WWE Universal Champion after the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view. Still hilarious name, by the way, coming up with a different video for something on that sense here very soon. Samoa Joe comes out there. He interrupts. He starts cutting his promo on Roman Reigns, everything in that sense. Typical stuff that you expect from Samoa Joe, which did set up to a match that was made later on that evening to go along with it. So, not a bad segment, not a bad way of opening up Raw. Honestly, I thought Raw was pretty decent here as I'm going through the notes here and everything in that sense. But up next after that one, you have the Hardys going up against Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson. I thought this match was a good match, but it didn't really serve much of a purpose other than getting the Hardys a win and completely confirming to everybody that either the Hardys are going to remain number one contenders to Sheamus and Cesaro, or they're continuing to bury the club, which seems to be the case. You really don't get much out of this one outside of maybe Matt throwing out a few more delete chants. This really doesn't serve any purpose down the line here. But up next after this, I'll talk about both of these right off the bat here. You got another Shattered Dreams Productions from Goldust, and then of course a subsequent rebuttal from R-Truth. Basically, Goldust starts going through movie quotes in this great monologue. I'm loving these promos from both of them, and basically saying that next week's in LA and we're gonna finally have our altercation between the two of us, or he's challenging him to that altercation, and he was gonna call it the Shattered Truth. again, good promos. I definitely like the promos that they're doing with Goldust and R-Truth. R-Truth, of course, later in the evening gave his rebuttal, saying he accepted the challenge, that he would see him in LA the next week. So again, I thought that those both came off rather good here. And like I said, I've been enjoying this program, albeit it's not going to probably lead to them doing much of anything else, but in the end, like I said, you're at least getting something good out of this, and that's, I guess, what we really need to be looking for. What we need to really be looking for out of WWE products is some kind of good storyline, some kind of good build-up. Even though it's not going to be like a main event program or something like this, you got a good build-up out of this, and it's something at that point in time. So up next, after Goldust did his promo and R-Truth was later in the show, you had basically JoJo introduced Elias Sampson in the middle of the ring. Kind of normal bit that he'd been doing. He cuts the whole bit of saying that Evansville, who wants to walk with Elias, and he tells a story about his dad, and goes off on saying that goes off like just knocking the town in every way, shape, or form. And he said something about the line at the end was, well, my dad never knew I was gonna drift into a crap hole or some kind of thing towards Evansville, and it got massive boost, massive heat. And instead of doing a song like he typically does, he sat there and basically just tuned the one little spot in his guitar to try to get it to a proper area. And he said he needed absolute silence and everything to do this, and it was really good stuff. I did enjoy this. Finn Balor interrupts him to finish this off, and they go to commercial break because Finn Balor is about to have a match with Bo Dallas. This wasn't a bad match. I mean, again, in the grand scheme of things, it was just a match for Finn Balor and a reason to get him out there. And you got some decent aggressive stuff from both Finn's side, but also Bo Dallas' side, who controlled the beginning portion of the match. But of course, the match eventually just went towards Finn Balor. And like I said, this really didn't lead to much of anything in that sense of it, because, like I said, you weren't really getting too much on that side of it. Up next, where are we going? Actually, before we go any further, because I think it happened a little bit later in the show, not too much longer, but Finn Balor did do an interview backstage with Charlie Caruso. And like I said, the match for Finn didn't really do much of anything other than show off Finn Balor and give a little bit on the side of Bo Dallas, showing a more aggressive side. You got a Finn Balor interview with Charlie Caruso, which eventually gets interrupted by Elias Sampson, who attacks Finn Balor. So maybe we're gonna get an Elias Sampson-Finn Balor feud somewhere down the line here, and we'll see where they go with this. We'll definitely see where we go with this. And also, that is not the last we see of Bo Dallas that night, because he has a backstage segment with Curtis Axel, where The Miz comes in and talks about what he had seen with the Marine 5 and everything with both of them, and his offers for them to be in his entourage, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But this brings us up next to Seth Rollins coming out, and he was going to cut a promo. Basically cuts a very basic babyface promo about being on the cover of the new 2K video game for WWE. Cuts a bit of a promo on Bray Wyatt, which he does get interrupted by Bray Wyatt, and instead of course, Bray Wyatt shows up on the Titantron, then eventually comes out. Promo-wise was kind of basic fare, where you're usually going with Bray and Seth in this one, especially with the aspect of the whole thing with sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here right now. But the whole area between the two of them, and also just it felt like Seth was kind of pandering to the crowd a little bit. As Bray Wyatt does come out, he immediately gets hit with a he immediately gets hit with a flying crossbody. You have a little spot, you have a little bit of blood. I think it ended up being where Seth needed a few stitches, but like Bray had blood in his mouth, but also there was blood on Seth Rollins' cheek as well. This was probably one of the more down segments throughout the entire show, because it just felt very forced in every way. So, again, they after this, actually, this was probably a little bit before it, but I'm going to be talking about it now. They were talking about, like, they were on doing the whole commentator spot where they're kind of talking about everything that was going on. And as soon as they get to Corey Graves, what did he do? He gets up and he goes to the back. And this eventually leads to Corey Graves meeting up with Kurt Angle. And this does eventually have Enzo and Cass come in there as well, where you had Corey and Kurt kind of talking about the info that was just given out and everything, and what's going on between Kurt and Corey. But also, like I said, they had this whole bit where Enzo and Cass come in, they start accusing people who attacked them, and Kurt basically says, by the end of the night, we're going to find out who attacked Enzo and Cass throughout those past few weeks. So that leads to a little bit later on in the show. So after this, though, up next was Akira Tozawa going up against TJ Perkins. And now before the match, now both of them have already been introduced and everything, but before the match starts, Titus O'Neil comes out and basically says, no, this doesn't have the right amount of hype, and he reintroduces him with like with bigger hype and everything, in that sense. He's behind a Tozawa the entire time, and the match itself was actually really good. I thought it was a really enjoyable match with Akira Tozawa and TJ Perkins, and you have this whole aspect of Titus O'Neil integrating himself with the Cruiserweights in the terms of this Titus brand thing, and getting behind Akira Tozawa, doing this chant, everything to go along with it. Akira basically goes over in the end with that diving senton to finish off the match. Crowd got into it. They gave it some decent time too. And then after the match, they have Titus O'Neil raise his hand, do everything in that sense. Says that this is going to be a big night for the Titus brand, because not only Akira Tozawa is going to be coming with us eventually, but him and Apollo Crews were going to have a match with Sheamus and Cesaro, and it would basically be like a big night for the Titus brand, everything to go along with it. And he proclaims that Tozawa will be the next Cruiserweight champion. Neville was out there as well, and basically says what he said the week before, that he needs to tread lightly, or he's gonna bow, or he won't even give a Tozawa a chance to bow a knee to the king. He was just going to annihilate him. It was like I said, I thought this was a pretty good segment, and in every way, like I said, I rather did enjoy this one, and I thought it came off rather good. So let's see here. Where are we going next? I'm kind of doing this because I don't have my typical notes for Monday Night Raw on here. I have them for Smackdown and NXT, but I forgot to type out the notes for Monday Night Raw. So you had another backstage interview with Samoa Joe, basically saying, what he was going to do to Roman Reigns, setting up everything, and setting up everything for the match later in that night. Also setting up a little bit for the Brock Lesnar match at the pay-per-view as well. So basically he said he was going to do to Roman Reigns tonight the same thing he was going to do to Brock at the pay-per-view. So this does lead into the Roman Reigns Samoa Joe match. And again, you got a very good match out of this one. Now, Grant, I don't feel like it served too much of a purpose in the end to have Samoa Joe go over Roman Reigns, but I'm not complaining on that one either, and I'm sure not a lot of other people are complaining to go along with it, that he goes over in the end. It was that ending of the match, which was kind of like great, but very hilarious all at the same time. Because, I mean, you're kind of because the end of the match had, which before the end of the match, they had like really good setups, everything in that sense, good near falls, good back and forth between both Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. And then as Roman Reigns is about to go for, I believe, a spear or a Superman punch, all of a sudden you just hear like an ambulance, or just like that backing up for like a truck, and they come to the back, or they cut to the back, and it's an ambulance coming in. And then Braun Strowman shows up, and guess who's back? Yeah, that's right. I already said the name. So Braun Strowman comes out of the back of the ambulance, and it's like he felt like he was out there in the arena already, because he does the whole brah moment. That was the hilarious part, honestly. I thought that was the hilarious part. And also, you're kind of implying that he's just been going around with this ambulance during the entire time. So that was enough for Roman to be distracted long enough, and he gets hit with the coquina clutch. After the match, Joe leaves, and Braun Strowman basically comes out. He takes out Roman again a little bit, says, "I'm not done with you yet," and announces that he's challenging him to an ambulance match at the pay-per-view, which does eventually get made. So, like I said, I thought there was a good segment. Honestly, I thought there was some good stuff on Monday Night Raw this week. It was not a bad show by any stretch of the imagination, but then again, with the way the last few weeks have probably been going, that wasn't that hard to pull off in the end. So, after this, you have a Miz TV segment where he has everything decked out with like the dancing bears again, and like a big present, just like it was supposed to be with the celebration that Maurice was doing. But his guest was going to be Maurice, as he's trying to apologize, and he gets to the point. And he gets to the point that she accepts that apology. Like, he showed that he fixed the grandfather clock, and he had gotten all these great things for her. And this eventually brings out Dean Ambrose, of course. And Dean basically grabs the champagne. He was going to try to throw it in the Miz, but lo and behold, he grabs Maurice and puts her in the way, which gets her angry, and she kind of storms off again. After Miz had knocked over the grandfather clock once again, to go along with it. And it was kind of going that same fare, and then lo and behold, the Bears attack Dean Ambrose, and they start taking him out, which they eventually reveal themselves to being both Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. So they are accepting Miz's offer to be part of his entourage and everything to go along with it. So you're going to have this thing to go along with it, which I think they're saying that this is kind of their answer to the fact that Maurice might be being off TV for a little while for one reason or another. In that sense, but in the end, you're gonna have Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel kind of following Miz around, and we'll see where they go with this one. This one has the potential of being interesting, I guess. Could lead to nothing in the end for either one of them, but in the end, I think it has the potential of maybe elevating both Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, and they're at least doing something now within the show. So they're doing something to go along with it. The finish of the segment was Miz hitting skull crushing finale, and he kind of does that evil looking stare and everything to go along with it. So up next, you had a match with the Titus brand, Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil, going up against Sheamus and Cesaro. Not much to this match. It was an alright match, but it kind of just, like, they hyped it up earlier in the show, and like maybe you're thinking that they would, potentially win a match against the Raw Tag Team Champions or something like something in that sense. But not, pretty much just ended with Sheamus and Cesaro getting the basically getting the win and winning the match. So it really didn't lead in much into anything to go along with it. So you had the thing with the night earlier with Akira Tozawa, everything in that sense, but then they kind of just lose in the end. So nothing much to that match. The match, like I said, itself was fine. But they made, was it before they did one more match? They actually did a video package hyping the Samoa Joe Brock Lesnar match, and boy, was that video package great. Just how they had everything set up in that video package to hype Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar, I thought was really good. It makes you lead to believe that maybe they've got something more planned for this particular match other than just Suplex City for it, even though they do make mention to Suplex City inside of the video itself. But otherwise, really, really good video package for that particular match. So this goes to I think was the final match of the night, which was going to be Sasha Banks going up against Nia Jax. The match itself really didn't lead much to anything. You had Alexa Bliss come out before the match, and she joins the announcers, so you had all that going on. They went to commercial break during this time, so they come back, and the match is already going underway. You get a few moves here and there. You kind of get the typical, stuff from Nia Jax and Sasha Banks in this, but Emma comes out to confront Alexa from the week before, which causes Alexa to run to the ring and eventually lead to the disqualification because Emma joins in and they attack Nia Jax. She attacks Nia Jax in the end, which causes that DQ. And then apparently Alexa and Emma make up within this time frame somehow, and they start attacking Sasha to go along with it, which brings out Mickie James and Dana Brooke. They gain a little bit of control, but Nia helps them gain control back, and it looks like all three faces are going down. And Bayley comes out. So Bayley just comes running down to the ring, and lo and behold, they don't have her coming off as like looking weak for once in this one. They have her come out there, and she just starts going nuts on everybody. She starts, she hits. She comes in, like, does the typical forearms and everything towards Alexa Bliss and Emma. She does her variation of back body suplex, but the final part was like, oh, she's kind of going semi-strong style on this one, was that running knee she did to Emma. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. That's the Bayley we remember in NXT right there. It's like, she's all, like, promo-wise, she's all this fun and games, wanting to make everyone smile, but once she gets in the ring, it's like, she kicks it in and she, can, hold her own. And so, if that's going to be the way that they're going with Bayley, good. But there's the rumor going around, I forget the site off the top of my head. It's not your typical site like a Wrestling Observer or a WrestleZone or something in that other sense, but it's a different source that's saying that WWE is going to be potentially going to a SummerSlam angle where they're playing a storyline that she's never kissed a man or something like that. And if they go that route and where she does do something like that at SummerSlam, that's probably not going to be all that good because I don't think a lot of people would buy into that one in any way. They just wouldn't buy into it in that sense. But what we saw out of Bayley tonight was a step forward. Hopefully they don't take that step back. But otherwise the segment was kind of to go along with it. You just kind of got that good spot towards the end of it to go along with. So this leads to the final segment of the night for Monday Night Raw, which was Kurt Angle coming out basically to try to reveal who was the person who had attacked Enzo and Cass. And he brings out both the Revival and Big Show. I love what Big Show does. It's like, Kurt, you know me. If I'm going to attack these guys, I'm going to attack them to their face. And it's like, I can't believe you're insinuating this. And I'm out. I don't even want to be on this show anymore. And just walks out. Good stuff. I like it. like I said, just good stuff from Big Show there. The Revival, love what the Revival did too. Because they basically go like, Kurt, we do some dastardly things, but this time we're innocent. And Kurt basically is like, yeah, you guys are. I talk with a lot of other people, and you have good alibis, everything in that sense. And then, as Kurt was about to say something else, to go along with it, he gets interrupted by Corey Graves. And lo and behold, apparently Corey Graves has security footage of what was going on. Now, why is he not telling this to Kurt if he's supposed to be on his side? Oh, wait, this is supposed to be your clue that that Corey Graves is probably not on Kurt Angle's side. And even though he doesn't care for Enzo, how he ends up talking to him and everything, he starts basically running down Cass, and then he shows security footage of Cass setting up everything and then kicking the box. Kicking the box to make the noise and then falling to the ground and holding his head to finish off the attack. Which of course basically implicates Cass as the one. And eventually he just says, yeah, I did it. And starts cutting the scathing promo on Enzo, like to the point that Enzo cries in the ring to go along with it. And it was a really good promo from Cass, which finished him off with him kicking Enzo in the face. Like he just goes off on Enzo, saying like he's always had to watch his back. He's always had to basically cash the checks that Enzo's mouth was writing and everything to go along with it. And it's like, this isn't going to happen anymore. We're done and we're out. And that's how they basically go off the air. So Monday Night Raw this week, I thought, actually came off pretty good. I rather enjoyed Monday Night Raw. And they didn't tease this for like too long with this whole who attacked Enzo, who attacked Cass, and they reveal it to be Cass who attacked Enzo, and the other attacks on Cass were just faked up by Big Cass. So now you're gonna have Big Cass go on his single side, and we'll see where they go with Enzo, but pretty much like Enzo's been that whole catalyst of getting beaten up and tagging in Cass and everything to go along with it. Are they going to do something more with him now? And we'll see where they go along with it in there. But yeah, that pretty much was it for Monday Night Raw in a nutshell. Like I said, I thought it came off as a pretty good show. So, as I bring up my notes, this takes us into Smackdown Live on June 20th, 2017. And of course they started this off with the whole thing of, and you saw a bunch of different segments throughout the night too. So I'll talk about a good chunk of this right off the bat. They started off with the whole women's Money in the Bank controversy with Ellsworth climbing up and grabbing the briefcase and everything in that sense, and which I gave my thoughts on how I felt about it on the actual pay-per-view review that I had already done. But in this case, the promo that Carmella comes out there and cuts at the beginning of the show was really, really well done. And I liked what she had done inside of this one. Like, she was, naming off precedents, naming off other areas of the like interference in Money in the Bank ladder matches. The only difference was that the person who won the match in the end actually climbed the ladder and grabbed the briefcase. So it was just one little thing that was completely different. I like the promo that Carmella cut here, and like she was garnering good heat, everything in that sense. And they would have stuck to this. I feel like they would have done I think they would have done a decent job of saving what they had done at the pay-per-view. But they go throughout the entire night, and you have Brian who meets up with Charlotte, and Charlotte just goes off on Brian, saying he's like, no, it's not, like, it's time for you to take action, make the decision, everything in that sense. Is like he was saying to everybody, he's like, I'll have a decision a little bit later. And you had other segments with both Natalya and Tamina. Natalya's just sucking up to Daniel Bryan, saying it's like, oh, happy belated Father's Day, everything in that sense, trying to suck up to him. Well, Tamina's like, I'm not having any of this, and just threatens everybody to go along with it. And then you have a backstage segment before they go with that. And I'll talk about that portion of it a little bit later, but I'll talk about this segment. You have Daniel Bryan talking with Sami Zayn. And they were talking about the men's Money in the Bank real quick. And he also, saying what Sami Zayn had done in there, like the things he had done and done well. And Becky Lynch walks up. And this is after they make Sami Zayn and Baron Corbin for the next week in the terms of a match. As Becky Lynch walks up, you get this, it wasn't like an over analytical, it was just felt like a genuine moment, because it was like, oh, Zayn hadn't talked to Becky in a bit, and it was the first time that he had the chance to say, it's like, hey, I felt all you guys got robbed, that sucks, everything in that sense. As Becky cuts this great promo on everything, like how she felt like she couldn't do anything. It's like, no matter how hard she would try, no matter how hard she would work, she even makes it say like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's the land of opportunity. It feels like it's the land of handouts at that point, because you, like, even in the night before, or even earlier in the night, you had Naomi cutting a promo on everything, and she gets interrupted by Lana, who basically challenges her, and Naomi accepts, and the match is made. So you have another women's title match next week to go along with it. So it's like, it's not, she was trying to play it off as like, it doesn't feel like the land of opportunity. It feels like the land of handouts. And Brian gives her this line. It's like, it's very complicated. And she just finishes it off with, is it really that complicated to do the right thing? It was great. I liked the promos that they had setting up. I'll talk about what they do out in the ring a little bit later on. So we're going to go into some of the matches here. We had Big E going up against Jimmy Uso, which I thought was a decent match. They basically kind of did the exact same thing they did the week before, where Big E looked like he had the main control. The Usos were going to leave, but Kofi did his trust dive, which prevented them from leaving. And Big E ends up picking up the win over Jimmy Uso. I thought it was a decent match. Big E, again, looks good in the ring, everything to go along with it. I thought it came off rather well. And before we get into the next match, we also had an interview with Randy Orton. This was a good promo. You could tell there was some fire behind this promo with Randy Orton. It wasn't one of those promos that he was just kind of painting by numbers and everything. He was like, he was incensed about what the Singh brothers had done to his dad and everything, and how he lost control and it ended up costing him the match. But he also says, like, well, if they want to make this personal, maybe I'll have to go to his home and start RKOing his father, his uncles, his nephews, his grandmother, and he just says like everybody, and it's like, okay, you could definitely see there's some fire behind this promo, and that Randy Orton is attempting everything in his abilities to get Jinder Mahal over, and he's doing a really good job of it, and I thought it came off rather well. So this leads into our next match, which was Dolph Ziggler going up against Shinsuke Nakamura. This is a good match. Served no purpose. I'm not gonna lie on that one. It served no purpose in the end, but it was a good match. And honestly, I thought it was better than their pay-per-view match, even that they had back at Backlash. But what was the purpose of this match other than it just being there? It felt like you could have given Shinsuke Nakamura a different opponent there, instead of the same opponent we've seen quite a bit of times recently with him. And yeah, like I said, it was a good match. Let's not get that wrong. It just didn't really serve much of a purpose on that one, because we've seen it a good chunk of times. So up next to talk about was Kevin Owens issuing an open challenge for the United States title. And he comes out there kind of explaining the rules and everything about it, saying that anybody from Dayton, Ohio, and before he got the full thing out, AJ Styles came out and it's like Kevin Owens is like just perplexed at this entire thing. It's like, did you not hear me? Somebody from Dayton. So lo and behold, who comes out next? It was American Alpha. It was both of them with Jason Jordan and Chad Gable. It ends up being Chad Gable. You have Jason Jordan just kind of there like, do this. This is yours. You got this. And everything is like, and you just, again, like Kevin Owens bewildered. It's like, wait a minute. I know you're not from Dayton. And he ends out giving, it's like, Chad's just like, yeah, I'm from Dayton now. I just moved here. Like, when? This morning. And it's like, wait a minute, what's your address? He gives out the address to Wright State University. That was good stuff. I grew up in the Ohio area, so I knew that ended up being Wright State, I believe. Or it might have been Dayton University. I know they're basically in the same area. It was pretty good stuff. And of course AJ Styles apparently can make the matches now. It's like, all right, it's like, yeah, I know that place. I know that. Ring the bell. This is good to go. And it's like you just have like Kevin Owens looking around, I was like, what's going on? And then of course the match starts. I thought this match was pretty good too, though a good chunk of it happened on commercial break. To go along with it, Kevin Owens of course goes over in the end, which is what I thought, which is what you kind of thought they were going to go for. But it seems like they're going to be continuing on this whole Kevin Owens and AJ Styles feud, when it looked like they might have been going Kevin Owens and Shinsuke Nakamura, but it looks like they're going to continue on with Kevin Owens and AJ at this point. So before I get to the Daniel Bryan out in the ring segment, they had a backstage segment with Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley basically pleading their case for them getting their opportunity at the tag team titles. I like how Zack Ryder says there shouldn't be a statute of limitations on the fact that we were number one contenders, we deserve this shot. And you have Bryan going like, well, you have a point, but the tag division's also changed a lot since you had left, since you were gone 6 months ago. And instead of just kind of, giving them the title shot that you kind of expected that they would just give to them at that point in time, he ends up making a match with the Usos and Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley for the next week. Non-title, and if they win, they get a title opportunity and everything in that sense. So maybe they're going to be doing the turn next week. I don't know. You kind of feel like that Zack Ryder's going to go heel on Mojo Rawley at some point in time. It's just going to be a matter of when it actually ends up happening, more than if it's going to end up happening. At least that's how I end up feeling at this point in time, because I feel like if they're going to start using Mojo Rawley on the show more, which they hadn't been doing, same with Ty Dillinger, he got something this time, at least with a Sonic commercial or something to go along with it, which I thought was pretty good for that, but like they're not using him in ring, they're not doing this. Maybe this is going to lead to a feud with Mojo Rawley and Zack Ryder or something down the line here, because it's pretty clear that the New Day is feuding with the Usos at this point in time. But we'll see where they go with everything on this one, and they have that match next week. So this brings out basically Daniel Bryan to end the controversy of what was going on, what's going to happen with the women's Money in the Bank briefcase. That he's made a decision, everything. He was going to bring everyone out, which he does. He brings all the women out that were involved in the match. And the way he made it look like at the beginning is that it was just going to stay with Carmella, based off of rules, everything to go along with it. And it gets to the point that Ellsworth basically starts insulting Daniel Bryan, making threats to him and mentioning his kid, which of course gets Daniel Bryan up in arms. And it's like, and just tells Ellsworth to shut up, everything in that sense. He said, you ever mention my kid again, I will punch you to the point that you can't breathe, and then I'm gonna fire you, type moments. And he and this of course starts promos with everybody inside the ring with like Natalya, Charlotte, Becky, and Tamina to go along with it. And basically, the decision in the end was that Daniel Bryan said he wasn't going to let Ellsworth interrupt a historic moment in there. So he forces Carmella to give up the briefcase, and he walks out with it. And he walks out, and he was going to walk out of there, and that they were going to hang it up, and they were going to have another match next week. Now, if this was the actual game plan, that they would have this controversy and this thing that could potentially alienate a lot of people, only to have Carmella give it up and then have to go for it again next week. Nah, I'm not really digging that decision all that much in the end. Like, at that point in time, it depends on what they decide to do. Like, if Carmella wins next week, okay, they can continue on building on the heat of the whole aspect of Carmella having the women's Money in the Bank briefcase. But but if they have her not win in the end, it's like, oh, you built up a couple weeks of heat, but now you kind of take it all away by having her just lose in the end. And as much as I didn't really care for the how they decided to book the end of the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, which I thought the rest of the match was really good, but that ending was just not the right one that they should have done. This just makes it feel like that they're backtracking a little bit in this one, and they should have at this point in time, they should have tried to just do as much damage control as possible and keep the briefcase on her without having the second match. But now it looks like we're going to have the second match in that, and I believe they had it on Talking Smack that Ellsworth's not even going to be allowed in the arena, or he's banned from ringside for the match to go along with it. And it's like, okay, here we go again. I don't really care for this one. I don't think it came off all that good. It makes it just feel like WWE was just backtracking off of something that they had already planned out. Which, I don't feel like it was a very good plan that they went with on Sunday, but it was what they went with, and they could have probably done something else. Because, like I said, Carmella was getting good heat at the beginning of the show. Why not run with that? Why not run with that? But I guess not. So this leads to the main event of the night. Now, I use that term loosely because they don't even advertise the main event, but you have Jinder Mahal going up against Luke Harper. It was a decent match. Jinder Mahal going over in the end. You have this bit at like mid-match where Baron Corbin kind of teases a cash-in on Jinder Mahal and everything in that sense. Like he kind of did the bit with, he kind of subtly did the bit that they did at the pay-per-view itself with Carmella, but he doesn't like tease giving it to the person or anything in that sense. He just kind of walks out, taunts Jinder Mahal a little bit with it. That causes a slight distraction, but Jinder Mahal gets the win with Colossus in the end. So after the match, Randy Orton comes out. He basically goes nuts again, and he beats down Jinder Mahal throughout the entire thing. It's like, oh, maybe we are gonna get a cash in, but right before he could try to hit an RKO on Jinder Mahal, the Singh brothers get into the ring and end out basically interfering on that side of it, and he basically beats down the Singh brothers as Mahal runs away. And gets away, and that's how they get out of the cash-in as well, is that Mahal was able to get away through the crowd, so Baron Corbin doesn't have to come back out. Again, like I said, they don't even advertise this as a main event. It was just kind of there. That's all it really was. Smackdown, honestly, in the end, wasn't all that good this week. Not gonna lie. Though, in good news for both Raw and SmackDown side, they did have a good jump in their ratings. I think about 500,000 people for each show showed back up for this one. So it was like Raw was actually over 3 million viewers, and SmackDown was at about 2.5, 2.6 million to go along with it. So that was good in that sense. That's some good news on that one. So more people ended up watching these week's shows than they did the previous week's shows. So hopefully they can keep that going in the terms of, good news towards Raw and SmackDown on that side. So this is going to bring us to the final thing to talk about. As I bring that up, we're going to be going into NXT for June 21st, 2017. Not a bad show. I am enjoying NXT a little bit more again each day as it keeps going. So they started off the show with Peyton Royce and Ember Moon. Decent match from there. Peyton Royce looking pretty good inside the ring, but of course Ember Moon goes over in the end. So it feels like they're building that back up towards Ember Moon going after Asuka, especially with the aspect that they announced that Asuka's going up against Nikki Cross the next week in a last woman standing match. So you don't kind of think that they're going to continue on with anything on that side, because that feels like a definitive. That feels like a definitive end to a feud and everything in that sense. But after this match, you had Hideo Itami come up as Cassius Ohno was cutting a promo on his match with Aleister Black tonight for that night. And he basically apologizes for his frustrations. And you have Cassius kind of giving some advice to Hideo and everything in that sense. Like, yeah, I get it. You lost. I've had some frustrations too. Everything in that sense. But we kind of just... I've learned to just basically put it behind me and keep trying to move forward and moving forward and trying to get Hideo Itami to do the same. So he kind of apologizes everything in that sense. So after that, you had the Ely brothers going up against Eric Young and Alexander Wolf. They did not have Killian Dane nor Nikki Cross around in this one. So basic squash match, nothing too much out of this one. You had Eric Young, Alexander Wolf going over, and they just, like I said, there wasn't too much to this one. They're not really doing too much with the Ely brothers at this point. It doesn't feel like they're in their final stages of their characters. They've still got a little bit of work left to do on that side. We'll see where they go with them, because honestly, they're not too bad in the ring. I do rather enjoy them inside the ring and how they work in general. Also, the aspect that they basically look alike in every way. I think they just have tattoos on different sides of their body and everything. Like, it's almost to the point, I think I've heard people say that it's like one guy kind of does one thing and the other guy is just almost like green screened in almost in some ways, how they interact with each other. It's pretty good stuff, honestly. I'd like to see them do a little bit more, but they're kind of not in that final stage yet. So, up next after this, though, you had Rachel Evers going up against Sonya Deville. You had a video package for Sonya Deville before that. Kind of hyping her up going in and everything here. Again, another squash match here with Sonya Deville going over. So they're trying, like I said, there was some good stuff in this one. And she's playing off of this MMA background and everything. A little bit... I won't say a little bit too much, but like more to the point of being the striker. She is a heavy strike-based and like ground and pound style of wrestler or an MMA fighter in that one. Like, she does like wrestling takedowns that you would typically see like more in Greco-Roman style and everything in that sense, or in an MMA ring. Cage to go along with it, and it doesn't look too bad, honestly. It looked a little bit sloppy at times in this match, but they, like I said, it's not like the way that she comes off, you almost feel like it shouldn't be a very crisp style of match. It should feel sloppy. It should feel like a fight in that one. And they do have Sonya Deville go over in the end with a variation of the Kimura, I believe it was the Kimura lock that she had a variation of in there, and got Rachel Evers to tap out. So, up next, you had a Bobby Roode, Roderick Strong altercation in the back. They had been promoting this throughout the night, too. that you had like Bobby Roode at a photo shoot, and you had people just kind of walking in, and you had Roderick Strong coming in with his fiance and his kid, and of course like Bobby Roode starts insulting Roderick Strong, and he even gets to the point of saying that, and he says this with such a grin on his face too. I don't know why I noticed the grin so much, but it's like, hey Roderick, if you want, I think it was one of those bits like. He talks to his fiance. It's like, hey, if you ever want to be with a real man, just give me a ring. And then Roderick Strong just goes off on Bobby Roode as they had to get broken up and everything in that sense, which does lead to them announcing that there's going to be an NXT title match with Roderick Strong and Bobby Roode for July 5th. So next week you get the last woman standing match, and then the next week you get an NXT title match to go along with it, which I think they're filming at, like, I'm doing this on late Friday night. They might have already filmed. I think they were filming on Friday down at Full Sail. So I guess spoilers would technically be out for that right now, but I'm not reading them at this moment or anything in that sense. So this leads to the main event of the night, which was Cassius Ohno versus Aleister Black. This is a very hard-hitting, good match between the two of them. It started off rather slow, and it looked like you could tell they were kind of telling that story. It's like both of them knew they were strikers, so they kind of changed up their games to avoid the striking, which was like they went more mat based for a little bit, and it's like both of them were like trying to either avoid the black mass or the kick. Like Cassius was trying to avoid the kicks of Aleister Black, while Aleister Black was trying to avoid the forearms from Cassius Ohno, which, you know, eventually it all started going into a faster pace, and they started doing more strikes towards the end. And I thought it came off really good. You had, of course, Cassius going for that big elbow that he usually goes for at the end, and he runs right into a black mass roundhouse kick and basically tumbles down and gets pinned, and Aleister Black ends out winning. You also, but like before all that, you had this really good spot where you have Cassius Ohno kind of doing that Indian style pose, sitting in the ring, like meditating pose that Aleister Black does all the time. And you just got like this bewilderment look, and it wasn't over the top either. It didn't feel like it was over the top from that Aleister Black. Just like this look is like, is he actually doing that type thing from him? And it came off real. It was a nice little subtle spot in the match, and I like how Aleister Black knows that he can't, like, just kind of, like, he comes off as a person who's centered and can sense somebody coming after him when he does something like that. He knows Cassius Ohno couldn't do that and just kicks him straight in the back to go along with it. I thought this was a good match. Almost expected Hideo Itami to come out in this one based off of what they had shown earlier, but they did not go anywhere with that at that point in time. And all in all, like I said, it was a really good match, very enjoyable. So overall with NXT as well, I enjoyed the show. Like I definitely enjoy, like, Raw was definitely better than most Raws have been recently. Then again, not too hard. Smackdown I felt was a little bit of a letdown, but then again, they had to work off of that controversy storyline with the women's Money in the Bank, and honestly, I didn't like how they went with it either. I thought they started off well, and it kind of ended poorly. And then NXT kind of was being NXT this week. I thought it was a rather enjoyable one. A lot of the matches during the show were kind of squashish, and you had some build up for other matches to go along with it, with a very good main event to go along with. So I rather enjoyed NXT this week in that sense of it. So, like I said, this is definitely a different video that I typically don't do all that often, where I talk about all three of them at once to go along with it. It's something I'll probably go away from next week, unless you guys end up really liking this one. I knew this video would run a little bit longer. I think I ran about an hour on it. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys next time. As a matter of fact, I will probably be doing a video sometime tomorrow for Impact Wrestling. So we'll see you then. Take care.